Welcome to Paperweights, the podcast where two self-proclaimed gym rats and shooting enthusiasts delve into the world of literature with a sprinkle of humor. Although their biceps could crush a walnut, don't let that intimidate you. They also have a nerdy side. Mike and Brandon have a voracious appetite for reading, particularly in the fantasy genre, and they want to share their passion with you. So grab your protein shake and your favorite novel and join us for a humorous and insightful journey into the world of books with Paperweights.
Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Paperweights. I am Brandon.
And I am Mike.
And holy hell.
Yeah.
That section was wild and a lot happened, and we want to try to get through it in 90 minutes.
I think that's our goal. I think that's the goal.
So I hope so. I just want to preface this episode. I know usually we keep it relatively clean. I know there are some things in this section that are, if you're sensitive to certain things or certain topics, just be aware. We'll try to keep it as clean as we can. Or I will. I don't know how Mike.
I make no promises. This is for adults by adults.
So it's not quite autumn yet, but I am wearing my pumpkin spice must flow shirt.
You're so basic.
Yeah.
Apparently after July 4th, it is the official start of spooky season, according to some of my Halloween-loving friends.
Got you. Yeah. Was it a basic Bene Gesserit?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Basically a basic Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pumpkin spice.
All right, so let's dive into this. We start off with chapter 9.
Yeah, so chapter 9. So one thing I noticed, it starts off, the first section is titled Darkness, and the second section is titled Light. So at first my mind was like, why is this? And after reading through, I have a theory of why. But that section involves focuses on Ansha, and whenever she is so she starts off on the planet Lornu, which is where the institute is.
I think so, yeah.
And so we're kind of seeing her learning more after being having her mentorship with Torja. Gotta keep all these names up.
There's a lot of names.
Yeah. So in this first section, we learn it's more similar emotional states are easier to sync with other people psychically.
Yeah, so she finds herself dream sharing, and they kind of talk about they all in order to dream share, they basically have to be same mental and emotional state. They have to basically fall asleep at the same time and start dreaming at the same time. So there's a lot of things that kind of have to line up. And then she finds herself dream sharing, and she basically wonders if she's pair bonding, which is a thing that she was told would never happen.
Right, and the pair bonding is that's an Azean thing.
Yep, because I wrote down, I was like, she didn't think she was Asian enough to pair bond.
Right, and so the Asians, we learned they're monogamous. They pair bond for life,
and it's supposed to be like the deepest connection that you can have, because you're connecting with somebody like at the psychic level, which is like subconscious, basically. I don't know.
Right, in Asian society, you get to know a person first before you have strong sexual desires for them.
Right.
However, Ansha is learning that she has just these strong sexual desires for strangers.
Yeah.
Which is not Asian. So, I think we learned already.
We kind of learn why later though, like why she goes that route.
Right. And she, am I making it up, or is she actually very part Braxy?
We don't, they don't really tell us like what she is in like up to this point. But what we do learn in the very next section in this chapter is that there's a possibility that the person she's pair bond that she was having that psychic dream with, I think, is Braxton. Because there's that very next little section that's it's short. It's like barely a paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, is it true you thought shared with them or with one of them? And I couldn't tell if that was on the Azean side or the Braxton side. But either way, it would have been Anja thought sharing with a Braxton.
So, yeah, in in that second section, I took these as different classes at the Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like questions, so like introduction to Braxton's psychology. Would the daughter of Darmal Lu care to clarify this point?
Right.
So I took that as the professor asking if Darmal wants to clarify something in the class. Transculturalism beyond diplomacy. Is it true you've thought shared with one of them?
Yeah.
So I took that as, so everybody knows that her parents died.
Right.
And that the death opened up her psychic ability.
Mm-hmm.
And that in that intense moment of Zatar killing her parents, she has a this whole time I've taken it that she has a connection specifically, not just to Braxton's, but specifically to Zatar. So for that, I took it as being him. And then we have the politics of communication was instrumental in settling the Darian affair. So again, it like professors seem to be picking on her.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next 5 lines are thoughts.
Right.
They're in italics in their thoughts. And so I took those as her listening in on other students' thoughts about her. So,
yeah.
She is so cold, so aloof, so different.
Mm-hmm.
She thinks she knows everything. So intense. She's not really one of us. Why is she here?
Right.
So I didn't take those as being the professor's thoughts. I took those as being the other students' thoughts. So in that section definitely plays into my thoughts about why this half of the chapter is called darkness, because she's struggling with being left out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's definitely not in the in crowd at all.
No. And that moves on right into 3, which further section 3 of this furthers that, and she finds out we see her interact with Yamada, which is he has a Lugastine, which is non-Asian human,
right,
but part of the Asian Empire, and he understands Ansha's being that he is not Asian, understands Ansha's struggles,
right,
with trying to fit in with Asians but not being one. He's a master of sword and
basically all primitive weapons.
Fencing, yeah. So all just primitive combative weapons, which we learn Ansha is not comfortable with, but like innately she's not comfortable with them. But because of that, she seeks it out. She says, I'm making this my point to be as accepting of discomfort as I can. Which is interesting. The book, I'm pretty sure you read it, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter.
No, it's on my short list to read though.
Okay,
that one's definitely on my short list.
And the big thing in that book basically is that modern age we seek out comfort, and
Right.
we live in comfort, and basically doing so stunts our growth and our progress
Mhm.
in life. So he urges everybody to seek discomfort when possible, uh, including getting out into um, nature
Right.
and rucking and doing things that are just,
Do the
you
hard
go,
stuff.
uh, but you feel better after, and you never
Right.
regret doing it.
So something that I thought was interesting about that is that there's a couple of lines that are in the book. I don't have it open to that chapter, but I should. It almost looks like she's starting to study Braxton philosophy. Like she's so intent on understanding the Braxton people. Like she's starting to study their philosophy, because otherwise, why else would she go out and start trying to become a master at swordplay? What do the Braxtons carry? Swords.
Hmm.
So
Which is funny because she wants to prove that she belongs in Asia and that she is Asian,
right.
but she's going off and doing these things, which she was, you know, she was forced into this hatred towards Braxton and
Yeah.
understanding them. So it's a very um, dichotomous. Is it the right word I'm looking
It
for?
is no, I think dichotomy is good there, because it's like she's she really wants to be Asian, but because they have aimed her at Braxton, it's almost like she feels like she has to understand Braxton to fight them. So
Almost like Secheva's son, who's like, I'm gonna teach this guy who wants me to be this, and I don't want to be it by becoming what he wants me to be, so I can
mhm.
defeat him.
Yeah, so here I found it real quick. It said, to defeat the Braxtons, you must think like a Braxton. And then there's two quotes out of dialogues, which I assume is Braxton philosophy. So the true warrior eschews comfort, which we just got done talking about, and strength is derived from adversity. So like going out and seeking that conflict and that.
Oh yeah, I wrote that down. That's in the next the second half,
Mm,
in the light side. But yeah, the true warrior eschews comfort, and strength
mhm,
is derived from adversity.
yeah.
I actually wrote those
See
down
that,
in
because
my
that's an incredibly Braxton thing to do. Like that's not something that to look at. That's not something the Asians would have considered,
right.
really.
Correct. Um, let's see. Step back 1 second. Yeah, so at the end of the first section of In Darkness, Ansha notices that the thirst for combat actually suppresses her sexual desires.
Hmm.
So that's another reason why she wants to continue to train in physical combat as much as she can.
Well, and then Luthieus guy, the master swordsman,
Hmm.
knows he basically called her out on using her psychic ability to win all of her fights.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, so let's me and you fight then. And
That
she's like kind of cocky about it, because she's like, well, he knows I'm psychic. He knows I'm going to win. And then through the course of their fight, she's like, ha ha, look at me. I'm beating up on this master swordsman. And then he just crushes her at the very end. He's like, yeah, I know you're psychic. I'm going to use that against you. I'm going to make you think I'm doing something, and then I'm going to do something else without having to think about it.
right. He's fainting so much
Mm-hmm.
to like. He goes, I'm gonna do this, see what she does. I'm gonna do this,
Yep.
see what she does. I'm gonna do this, see what she does. Okay, I know exactly what she's gonna do.
Right.
I'm gonna feint this, but do this, and then she's gonna be lost.
Yep. And that I thought that was great, because then he's like, you're never going to get better fighting your own people. You have to go out and find people that aren't Asian to train.
Yeah, and so in that last section, we get the rector. So Ansha is with the director, and
Mm-hmm.
the director of the academy doesn't even believe that Ansha should or could ever fit into a proper Asian role.
Right.
So even somebody above her who's supposed to believe in her does not, especially not an officer, which they're trying to train her to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually only serves more motivation for her.
Right.
So the common theme I saw in that first section, darkness, is just dread. Like nothing is going her way.
Mm.
Everything's stacked against her. Everybody's telling her she can't be an Azean,
Right.
which is what she wants the most. And so then the second section, first Ansha realizes she's more comfortable on Lornu and at the Institute because of psychics. So she wants to be comfortable, or she notices when she's around psychics, because she is a psychic, she is more comfortable.
Right.
And she realizes that's going to stunt her growth, like I was talking earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get that coming into those two quotes. The true warrior eschews comfort.
Right.
So she realizes, okay, I can't be in a comfortable place. I have to be somewhere where there's adversity, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where she's going. Strength is derived from adversity. So
Right.
she's going to grow within this discomfort. She's learning that in order to become the best at her intended purpose, she has to become more uncomfortable, and then immerses herself in physicals instead
Yeah.
of the psychics. She chooses the hard path and a step towards independence from the Institute. And so, like, on page 144, I wrote on page 144. Let me go see what. Okay. This is actually the quote from Harcourt right before chapter 10.
Right.
And if the Braxana or any other single tribe were to try to rule Braxi for an extended length of time, they would have to set themselves apart from all other Braxins. They would have to create an image so alien to the rest of Braxton culture that no other group could aspire to it, and do it to such an extreme that the image itself becomes synonymous with power. Then and only then no man dared to question their rule. So, and I wrote Braxana is a tribe on Braxi, but it kind of describes I think they're like just the upper class.
Yeah.
And they've this comes into play later when Zatar takes over the ship, the Centira, and everybody notices that he's such a physical specimen.
Mm-hmm.
And not only in that section, but whenever he visits the fat lord that's on the outer
Yeah. The very next
planets.
chapter.
Yeah, the very next chapter. And so like they create such a physical, like overpowering physical presence and vanity,
Mm-hmm.
that it's just awe-inspiring, and people are afraid of it.
Well, and on top of that, like Zatar, like he doesn't just create this persona, like he lives it. Like he's one of those guys that, like, from what we've been reading, like he backs up everything he's saying.
Well, that's why they call him Zatar the Magnificent.
Well, and yeah, but remember, it started off like they called him that as a joke because he hadn't done anything.
And then now he's just trying to do everything.
And now he's doing all of it.
He's succeeding in things too.
So, but yeah, I did think that it was the moving into chapter 10. So, kind of talking about that. To me, that little snippet leading into chapter 10 is almost like the exact opposite of this Lamos guy. Because like he's so fat that he can't walk up the stairs to his house. He has to pause at every landing, sometimes even halfway up.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so fat he can't even undress himself. He has to have his alien helper to help him undress.
Yeah, and he's, if I read it correctly, he's so sexually disgusted by his alien as well that he's turned on by it.
Yeah. That is like next level perversion. Like he's so disgusted by his alien that it turns him on. That is
It's like self-hating people in the world. They don't realize what they are
right.
or what they're attracted to, so they hate it. Which that really was a natural, unplanned connection to. I believe it was either in this book, one of those snippets before a chapter, or it was
Mhm.
in Chris Moore's Barbell Buddha, which I'm reading, where it says passion and hatred are so very similar that sometimes they're easily confused.
Huh.
Um, and that's if a common theme here. If you think about that, here it is with this Lemos guy,
Right.
and then later on it is between Zatar and Ansha when they finally meet. Because both of them have so much hatred for each other, but they have respect for each other, like when they meet each other.
Mhm.
Um, and then we'll talk about what happens with them later, but you can kind of see where I'm going with that.
Right.
Yeah. Um, Lemos, he has sex slaves as
Yes.
well, and he prefers them to be docile and subservient,
Mhm.
like not give any fight.
Yeah, because
Probably
he
because
even
he's so
said that
docile.
what he even said that whenever he goes to the bath and the women are there, like they seemed afraid of him, and he was happy about that. It's like this
He's
dude's just a
fucked
piece of
up.
work, man. But
And
then, like as much as that, like then Zatar shows up, and again, like this, like to me, this harkens back to whenever Zatar got elevated, and he basically just walks in and kicks the door open, like, okay, we're doing this. Like that's basically what he did to Lemos. Like his mistress Savithe is like, hey, Lord Zatar is here, and he's like, I'll get to him later. He's like, no, he's here.
yeah,
Like
he's
you
right
can't,
outside your
yeah,
door. He's gonna
he's
come into the
here.
bathroom.
Yeah. And so, Lemos like gets up and like throws on this lavishly colored bathrobe. Because that's the other thing. Like Lemos like does everything almost the exact opposite of the Braxins. Like he likes to live in comfort. He's fat, which none of the other Braxins are. Like he's got
He likes
he
color,
he likes color. He likes all this other stuff. And then here
but that's
comes
why he lives on the outskirts because
yeah.
it affords him more
Mhm.
autonomy out there.
Yeah, because then like even like having aliens as house staff is against the stuff the Braxtons go with.
Yeah, he's breaking all the social codes, but
Yep.
because he's so far removed from the central Braxtons,
Mm-hmm.
they're not there to micromanage him.
Yep.
And then the local populace wouldn't dare question a
Right.
Braxana lord,
Right.
so he gets away with it. And we learn that uh, the we learn the actual intent from the letter at the end of this chapter, that he was sent to bring uh, Lemos back proper
But the
and to
way
use
Zatar
any.
does it is so gangster.
Yeah, they instructed him to use any means possible.
But at the same, so like he all right, so he basically goes and tells him, hey, you're living so far outside your means. You have the Central Lords want to claim your son, which is a giant. I mean, they just slapped him in the face with a baseball bat at that point, because even Lemos was like, you can't take my child.
He's like, yeah, we can.
Yeah, it's like, well, we're going to, and I can.
Spoiler alert, he can't.
Yeah, we find that out that he can't, but he's like, okay, well, maybe if you go and commit yourself to 2 years in the army, they'll get you they'll get you squared away, but somebody's going to have to, put their own personal, they're going to have to vouch for you, and that's an awful big ask, and I'm the only one here. And at this point, Lemos is basically groveling, saying, I'll do whatever you want you anything you want, ask, and it's yours. And Zatar's like, you have any real estate?
Yeah. He's like, yeah, I have this whole planet. You want this whole planet?
He's like, maybe. Tell me about it. And then he's like, okay, cool. I'll take it. It's just like, he just steals he steals a whole planet from this guy.
I mean, what the hell is the guy going to do with the planet anyway,
He can barely walk up the stairs. I mean, I don't think he's going to go to a planet. But again,
was it the planet that he was on, or
no? It was a different planet.
Oh,
so but this remember, like on the last episode, I talked about Zatar. This dude is a chess player.
mm-hmm.
Like not even a chess player. Like I'm starting to think, what's that game that like Genghis Khan and his people played, where it's like the hardest game in the world, where it's like 4 players at a time and two different colored pieces or something.
Yeah, I can't. It's not Go, is it?
No, I honestly, I have no idea what the name of it is. I just remember it's like the master strategist of the world played this game, and it's supposed to be like one of the hardest games ever. And like that's like to me, Zatar is starting to seem like an expert at that game. He is constantly pushing the fight, and he's stacking chips in his favor to like set up for some big win.
It is Go.
Okay.
An ancient 2-player abstract strategy board game from China.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the easiest games to learn how to play, but the hardest to master.
Right. So like chess. Chess isn't that hard to figure out.
Right.
But to be good at it is really hard. So anyway,
this is the next level.
Yeah.
And later on, we see him playing chess yet again in another chapter. But before we get there, that covers chapter 10. Cool. Just political chess piece moving.
Yep.
Basically, that's there.
And showing that Zatar is a master manipulator.
Yes. Master manipulator.
Yes.
We find out more about that as well.
Yep.
And then we have chapter 11, which it has multiple levels. So on a very large scale level, this is another chess move by Ansha.
Yep.
So so first of all, we're on a new planet, Hoth. No, not Hoth.
It seems like Hoth.
Yeah, it's almost like Hoth. Derlith.
Yep.
Their native race are bipedal humanoids that don't speak the common language, really. They have a rite of passage, which is to cross the expanse of ice alone, which takes 6 months on that planet, which 6 months on that planet is 3 standard years.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that.
I did. So it's a 3-year journey.
It's a 3-year journey for her in standard years, but on that planet, it's just 6 months.
Yep.
So the way with that, the way the time passes in this book, like you get concentrated bits of character growth, and then lots of skip over of, okay, yeah, all this is still going on, but there's nothing of consequence. It's just things falling in place from things that we've shown that happen.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm having that I have trouble with sometimes is keeping up with when it jumps back to other characters. Like, are we still like? Is it still the same timeline for them? Like, are we now 3 years ahead for this other person's timeline as well? Or is this just like back to the regular? I kind of think so too. Like, I think like the passage of time is the same for everybody. We just missed all the backstory for that one person's thing.
And the reason why I think so is I mean, there is jumps in time in the last chapter in this section. But whenever, not only is it jumps in time, but it does swap point of views back and forth until they meet up.
Yeah.
But you do get glimpses of the other of like hearsay or seeing something in the background from their point of view of the other side. So
Right.
you see things happening on the other side as well.
Now, C.S. Friedman did say this was her favorite chapter, and I can fully understand why.
Yeah, dude, it was so hard not to talk about this before the podcast. I mean, I texted you and said chapter 11, holy shit.
Yeah.
And the way she writes this is just amazing. And the way she wrote the end of the last chapter in this section was amazing as well.
Yes.
So let's dive into this. So first, whenever they were on the planet, they wanted to. So
no.
The Azean Empire was trying to gain the support of this planet.
Right.
And the Derlethans, the locals, said that in order to gain our trust, you must succeed in this rite of passage. And so at first, the Empire was like, okay, we'll send all of our sports people or, physical people over there. And they went, no, we don't want those. We don't want those. Give us somebody of at most average composure of your race, and we will judge y'all on that as a whole. And so Ansha Lu actually volunteered herself for this. And that goes back into her wanting to prove her physicality, prove that it is Asia and belongs there. And so she actually is granted temporary imperial status for this.
Yep.
So she's representing the empire in her quest here. And the Institute and the Council of Justice all think that she is going to fail. And the Council of Justice is like, okay, she's going to fail and we don't have to worry about her anymore. She's going to be gone.
Yeah, they're very much like they're really hoping she fails, just because they don't want to deal with her. She's definitely been leveraging her relationship with the Star Commander, Tanza. Can't remember her name. Torsia. She's definitely been leveraging that relationship to kind of get not necessarily where she wants, but it's like people don't like telling her no because of that relationship. And so this really, to me, seems they're like, okay, this is an easy win because if she succeeds, we get the planet that we want. But if she loses, then a problem's gone.
But what they didn't think about is that if she wins, then all of a sudden she is, like, oh, okay, she actually did that.
Right.
It's impressive and pulled it off. So her doing that, she continues to fight her inner desires in order to earn a spot in a society that despises her. So she doesn't want to go out there.
Right.
Like, that's the last thing she wants to do. But she's doing it out of her sense of, I need to prove that I belong in the society, even though the society doesn't want us.
Yep.
Which is not, it's not a psychologically healthy thing to do.
No.
Trust me, I fight through that a lot. Of like, I really want to be a part of that group because they're fucking cool, but they don't have the same sense of me that I have of them.
Right.
And it'll destroy you mentally and emotionally.
Yes, and we see her fight through this. It's definitely something that's relatable.
Yeah.
And the way she, and so the way she fights through it really shows that you have to understand yourself and understand your own strengths more to get through the hard thing, because that's exactly what she does.
Yeah. So when she left the place, the Derlethians they offered her as many Kirsu
Yeah,
as she would want, and I just liken these to sled dogs.
I
That's
kind of
essentially what they are.
I kind of liken them to like caribou, just because like that's what I mean. There's people that raise caribou and they can pull stuff and they can go across ice and whatnot pretty easily and they can survive. I guess because I spent time in Alaska, that's immediately where my brain went, was to caribou.
Okay, but I forget how many she takes. I think it was 20. They offered her as much as many as of those as she wanted, and as much rations.
Yeah,
And she picked a reasonable amount of both, just because she wanted to make it harder.
yeah, and she even admitted, like, she talks in the book about, she knew she was going to be able to hunt partly because of her psychic ability.
But what she didn't realize is that there weren't going to be as many creatures and animals out on the ice for her to hunt.
Right.
And she was actually she was relieved when she didn't sense any animals, because then she didn't have to go hunt. This is a weird. I can't imagine that.
But then we also find that there was something that the Derelethians chose to leave out of this whole trek across the ice.
The Kasunu,
basically freaking werewolves.
Yeah,
they're werewolves. That's what they basically are.
Except they're quadrupeds instead of bipeds.
Yeah, but they're smart.
Yeah, they're wolf-like creatures, intelligent, and have a culture beyond just pack mentality.
Yeah.
And she learns that from the psychic link with them. And so I'll say this now. If y'all haven't read at least book 1 of Wheel of Time, this is minor spoiler that we're going to relate to this, but I think it's fair game just because we've talked about it on our podcast before.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So this kind of reminds me of the Wolf Brotherness.
Yep.
In Wheel of Time.
That is exactly where I got with that. But almost like forced, rather than like she forced it on herself, rather than the other way around, where he had to finally own up to it to kind of get the full power of it.
Correct. It's not that she's going to be forever connected to these in the storyline.
Right.
I doubt these come up later on in the story ever again.
I really don't. I think this was a one and done with this one.
But if she were to ever go back to that planet, and encounter them again, I think there would be a mutual level of respect.
Yeah, because she basically ends up, because they come after her. And the reason why she finally figured out that the Derelethians kind of left the Kinsu out was because of that. Basically, that I didn't catch. Was it oil, or was it like or was it basically like gunpowder that could actually light in those frozen conditions that she was carrying with her?
I'll be completely honest. I'm drawing a blank on that completely.
So whatever that flammable material was that they gave her, and they're like, "You're going to want this," and she's like, "But why?" So she makes a fire circle to keep the Kinsu out, and then she finally figures out that they're like, she starts making that connection. Okay, they're hungry, they don't need a lot of food, and so she sacrifices one of her.
Now, before that, she kills one in an attempt to kind of intimidate them.
Yeah, she
but also she kills it and leaves it there and offers it for them as food, and
And
they
this,
don't.
they don't. They each, and this honestly reminded me of the bloodletting thing, because they all of them kind of went up and like they bit it, but they didn't eat it.
Right. It was like an honorary,
Yeah,
an honorable thing and a ritual.
yeah. And so then she's like, okay, well, I've got, my sled animals here. And so she cuts one loose, mentally projects fear into it, and lets it run, and they kill it like super quick.
Yeah, and then they divvy it up equally
Yeah.
among their pack.
Yeah, and that's really when she starts making that connection. Okay, these critters are way more advanced than anybody realizes.
So she does this to once she realizes they won't need their own,
Mm-hmm.
and she sacrifices the Kirasu for them. It was in hopes that they would grant her passage,
Yeah.
safe passage.
To
And
which they did.
kind of, I mean, they followed her because they knew she had food,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, all right, well, as long as you feed us,
Right.
we're gonna just follow you and kind of leave you alone.
Right. But we're
But
going
if
to
you
stay
stop,
right here the whole time.
yeah, and once you run out, then you're the food.
Right.
And so she tries to connect again, and she gets kicked out. Like she's trying to connect and really understand them, and she gets kicked out. And we're explained to as it's the discipline of distinction.
Right.
Just because their minds are so feral,
Mm-hmm.
this discipline of distinction kicks her out, so
Right.
that she doesn't just lose herself into feralness.
Right.
Which goes into the wolf brotherness.
Yep.
If Perrin stays in the wolf dream for too long, he will become not human,
Right.
but not essentially a wolf in his mind,
Right.
but just like as a human. And then because of this, we because of her being kicked out, she starts thinking about probes, and so we learn from her that probes can deal with abstract thought without the aid of visualization. So there is another distinction between a probe and a functional telepath.
Right.
So they can just and so back to the wolf brotherness, the wolves would send images
Yep.
to the wolf brothers so that they can understand. That was how they communicated between the wolves and the humans in Wheel of Time. So I liken that a lot to here.
Yeah.
So whereas a probe might be able to communicate without the visualization, so a probe might be able to really connect with the Kasunu here if they were to attempt the same thing.
Right. Yeah, because it goes on to say like she gets kicked out, she tries it again, she gets kicked out, and she starts thinking. She's like, so she basically has to let down all of her guard, all of her shields that she's built up over time, and then she almost like basically bullies her way in. Like she fights her way into one of the Kinsu, and finally like connects with it. But it was an incredibly difficult thing because she had to let down, basically had to make herself vulnerable and be okay with it.
Yes. It like at first I thought, obviously I didn't think she died,
Right.
but that section of it ends with not knowing if she succeeded
Mhm.
in what she was attempting to do, because right then it cuts away.
Yeah, and
So
it goes to the people waiting for.
yeah, and they're like, let us know if anything
Mhm.
comes within the barrier.
Right.
And then I'll like, there's a pack of Kasunu,
Yeah.
and this is very odd. They never come down. They never come this far.
Right.
And they're like, what are those things?
They're like major predators.
Yeah, if we have a problem. And then they're like, oh wait, hold on. There's
There's a human.
a human in there too. And so they saw her to it.
Mm-hmm.
And when she gets there, she is nearly feral. Like
Mm-hmm.
she is traumatized
Oh yeah.
because of how feral that experience was.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gets there and she's like, feed them
I promised them you would feed them.
and then give me human contact.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because once she showed up, like the Darlethians, they all knelt. Like it was almost like not even kneeling that she made the passage, but like not only did she make the passage, but she brought the Kinsunu with her.
Right. They'd never seen anything like that. Because like usually I gathered that usually if people making this rite of passage didn't make it across,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, yeah, they probably died to these guys.
Right.
They didn't they might not have they have a greater chance of succumbing to the Kasunu than they do just because of the cold.
Right.
Um,
Man, she was messed up. Like she was frostbitten. I mean, it even said her eyes had changed color.
and they kept saying that she kept telling herself, and
Mhm.
then the director waiting for it kept saying, if I just make it alive,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what else is there. If I just
Mhm.
make it alive, we have
They
the
can fix me.
science. We have the science and the technology, and we can fix everything else.
$6
I
million
just
man.
yeah, I just need to get through this.
We have
And
the
one last
technology. We can rebuild her.
one last thing I wanted to mention about the Kasunu. It was interesting that they could they can distinguish between intelligent and unreasoning
Mhm.
creatures.
Yeah.
So that chapter was
Feel better?
yes, sorry.
Good. Some major sneezes. My
everybody's
God.
like everybody's listening was like, the chapter's what? What man? Tell me.
Tell me about the chapter already.
That chapter was really, really awesome. I could not put it down.
Yeah, that was honestly I can like I said, I can honestly see why she said that was her favorite chapter.
Yeah, in this is actually her first book.
Right.
So having read some of her other books, this one I'm like, okay, there's not much lost from her early stuff from her
Mhm.
later stuff. Because a lot of authors you can tell later on they start to get into their stride.
Right.
And then you go back and try to read their earlier stuff and you're like, okay, it's missing something.
Right.
This one's actually pretty damn good. So let's see. We have we have 4 chapters left. I really want to spend a lot of time on the last chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can, I think we can get through the next 2 chapters pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's one of those like I think we can. I agree.
Yeah, there wasn't much So in chapter 12, we have another. Actually, I mean, both chapters 12 and 13 are another political move, chess piece moving
Right.
here. So chapter 12, we have, um, sorry, Zatar visiting another lord on the outer rim planets. This time it's a woman, and so uh, he's being forced to
Reproduce.
reproduce and meet the requirement of
Mhm.
four children per lord,
Right.
and they have to be purebred. So he has to
Mhm.
find another Braxana lord.
Well, he doesn't have to find them. They give him a list.
But they do give him a
They're like,
list.
hey, here's a list of purebred females that meet the requirements. And to me, this just really shows like how willing he is to get what he wants when he wants it, but not necessarily the way the central Brixana people want him to do it.
Right.
Because he goes to Laresh's house, this lady Laresh,
Mm-hmm.
who has already provided
Four.
for, but apparently that's not I guess that's like, I don't know if that's the most they're supposed to get to do or what, but
They're only required to have four,
right.
but I think so. The thing is, they there's so many stillborns
Yeah.
that it's very traumatic.
Right.
However, and she's an older woman too,
Yeah.
but he picked her because she's had four out
Mm-hmm.
of six
Yeah.
or eight
But
pregnancies.
her numbers were, her average was better than some of the other ones, I'm guessing.
Right. She had less stillborns than any other
Right.
that was on the list.
And she may be old. Like, I don't know how old she is, but like the way that she is written and described, like she's a very attractive, very uh she's a very sexual being. Like like everything about her is built for comfort and
hmm
pleasure. Like even like
Right.
her house, everything there is built to like kind of
But
draw you in and make you feel more sexual.
she abstains
Yes.
out of fear of becoming pregnant again.
Right.
And so, I wrote here. So what I gathered here is Zatar wants to challenge the four offspring per person rule and force better evolution.
Right.
So he sees with her an opportunity to weed out um, some illness that's
Mm-hmm.
common in Braxana lords. And so that's he goes to her with that, and he's like, "Hey, look, I know you've had your four,
Right.
but I need to have four
Mm-hmm.
in this." And then she's hesitant, and she's like, "No." Um, and I wanted to talk here because he slips something in her drink,
But he
and
gives
at
her a drink.
first,
He doesn't slip it to her. He gets it's a completely different drink,
right,
and it's
but
basically a drug.
he doesn't tell her what it is though.
Right.
At first, he gives it to her, and at first I thought it was, like a date rape drug.
Like roofies.
Yeah, but which obviously would a terrible thing to do. Like
Yeah.
it's completely immoral and fuck that if it was. However, being that what it turns out to be is a contraceptive
Mm-hmm.
so that she won't get pregnant. And so, that does manipulate her into agreeing to have sex with him.
Right.
Because she really wanted to,
Yeah.
but she didn't want to get pregnant. So I wrote down here is like, what are the moral implications of slipping somebody a contraceptive without them knowing?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that knowing that their major fear is becoming pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's why they're going to tell you no, and then you give them a contraceptive
Mm-hmm.
without them knowing, and then afterwards say, hey, look, I know you really want to do this, and they're like, yeah, I know, I really want to, but I can't. He's
Right.
like, well, hey, you can,
Yeah.
because I
Guess what you
gave you
just
this
drank?
contraceptive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know what the moral implications of that is. Like,
Right. And
is it immoral?
I mean, yeah, because he still gave her this drug without her knowing. So yeah, like that's, and then
But
they,
on a scale though, like,
it's
where does it fall? Like, is it on? Is there a moral scale?
again, this goes to that whole master manipulator thing. He knows what her hesitation is, but then they get there, and they're both incredibly attracted to each other, which it kind of goes against the whole Brixani thing, because the Brixanis, they're just like, no, we're going to do this thing because we have to survive, and they're both incredibly attracted to each other, and he knows what her hesitation is. So he basically drugs her, seduces her, or they really seduce each other. And then afterwards, he's like, hey, here's my deal. Here's the bribe. I will give you a whole planet if you give me a child. And then on top of that, I'll make sure you have all of this drug you want. That way you can keep doing the thing you want to do.
Right, which she hasn't been able to do.
Right. Out of fear of getting pregnant. He's like, look, I'll make sure you have an ample supply of this contraceptive. If you give me a son, I'll give you a whole planet.
Which is illegal, by the way. The contraceptive is illegal.
Yeah. But
And because they already have enough trouble
right.
having
Having kids.
successfully born kids.
Right. And he was like, there's nothing so illegal that I can't afford it. It's basically what he tells her.
Yeah.
But then did you catch that the planet he offered her is the same planet that he bribed away from the other guy?
I didn't, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, because I was like, because he
It's
said,
like, what the fuck does he need it for?
yeah. Well, that was what I thought too. It was like, he's like, hey, I've got a planet that's out close to the war area, or the war border, that's more than has hospitable. There it is, for human life, and I'll build you whatever you want on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's straight up the planet that he just pirated away from this other guy.
So I don't have anything left with that chapter.
Nope, that was basically it.
And the chapter 13, we move on. Ansha Lu is now 30 years old.
Yep.
And is the star commander of the flagship Conqueror.
Yep.
She commanded a smaller vessel, the destroyer, for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
She never won over the crew.
Right.
They reluctantly listened to her, but would have been happy to murder her and disobey her at any chance they got.
Yep.
She learns that the officers, so she's being warned by her sub commander, who's Zine Lee Tenor, that no, like, giving the history of the commanders of this ship, and like most of them either went crazy, killed themselves, or went into seclusion.
Yep.
Because of the officers and soldiers on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, I got to figure out what's going on here.
It was one of the most successful ships in the fleet, though.
Yeah, but the commanders never stayed long,
Right.
and something always happened to them.
Right.
And so it's like, well, how is it successful if the commanders are not sticking around? She finds out that every soldier and officer on this ship was born a child of war.
Yep. Like her.
Just like Ansha.
Yep.
Then we meet Tao In Shear, who's her private physician, and his sole purpose is to learn her alien nature, inside and out, very deeply.
Yep.
And when she meets him telepathically, she's like, that is something new I've never felt, and it was a sense of pure loyalty,
Yeah.
which is very suspicious.
It was initially, and then we find out that the Braxtons killed his wife, and the only reason why he didn't kill himself was because of this gig. Like, so yeah. I didn't find, I had a very brief fleeting moment like that is suspicious. Then I read a little bit more. I was like, okay, I can kind of see where they're going with this. I think
Was that revealed in the last chapter?
that the Braxtons had killed his wife.
Yeah.
That should have been in this chapter.
Okay. I missed over that for some reason, but
Yeah, because it says
I thought oh, let's see here. Where's the end of chapter 32?
yeah, they so she basically figures out that they're all going to be like her, that they're all like her, and that's why none of the other people have lasted, is because they all tried to do it all by the book, and these were people of action.
Got you.
And they were saying, like, even as she came aboard, they said something about how, tradition dictated that that area be completely clean and nothing there, but it was full of the smaller fighter ships, which should have been taken as a slight. But she looked at them and saw that they were all squared away, nothing was out of place, and they were all there ready to be launched into service. And so she was like, did they do it exactly the right way? No, but they're showing me they're ready to fight.
Gotcha. And I found where it says it was on page 191, and it said he was a civilian medic. Torja had rescued him from the soon to be dead when he planned to consummate his misery by opting for legal suicide. He had watched his bonded mate killed in a Braxton raid, not quickly and not pleasantly. The memory and the hatred was more than he could bear, but Torja talked him out of it. But also, see, Torja did that, not Ansha.
Yeah, Torja.
And
Yeah.
so,
But I guarantee Torja was like, hey, I've got somebody for you.
Okay.
That is felt, because remember, like these two, Torja and Ansha, they're both of them are pointed in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And Torja said, I will do whatever I can to make sure you get here. So
Gotcha. All right. So chapter 14.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say about 13 was right before they get there, apparently it was like tradition for the Azeans to kind of hang out and do all this pomp and circumstance with the warship as they take command. And her officer's like, what is your command? And she was like, let's go. And they're like, wait, what? We're leaving? Like, they were excited about it, but they were like, they couldn't believe that she had just said, we're not going to hang out. We got a war to go fight. And she was like, they're all like, oh yeah, you're right. Let's go.
She's ready for it. So chapter 14, we meet a new person, Cecil. Yeah, he's a fighter pilot. And this is the first time we get a sense or we're thrust into the space combat.
Yeah. We're finally seeing something that looks like war.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so the description of it's kind of confusing at first, and still I have to go read it again and again to really understand more. But just the kind of, because it says sight wasn't like you couldn't see certain things. They couldn't see certain things. So but they're fighting. So Cecil is a Braxton.
Yep.
And they'll use technology. they don't like the telepathic stuff, but
Right.
as far as computers and things, that they'll use those. And so,
But they see it as a means to an end and not something to celebrate.
right, we find out that the sword ships, they're called sword ships
Mhm.
instead of fighter planes, or not fighter planes, fighter ships. Excuse me. Um, they can link together,
Right.
and one of them can have control of all of them, and they go move all together,
Mhm.
and the same thing. We learn about um, Hires ratio,
Yeah.
or rather, in the first section, we were told that um, the Azean ship he's following is defying Hires ratio.
Right.
We don't understand what Hires ratio is yet.
Mhm.
We will in a minute, but at that point we did know. So I was like, "What the fuck is that?" And
Yeah,
and, and
I likened it to the basically the theory that they use to make planes fly.
mhm.
Like that's like because they don't really know why the theory works, but it does, so they use it. So
Yeah, and so he's chasing these Asian sword ships, and he destroys all but one, and he's
mhm.
trying to catch that one, but it's going like it's experiencing G force, essentially
Mm.
experiencing G forces that he shouldn't be
Yeah,
able to
it's
experience.
defying all the laws of physics.
Right, and so we learned in the next section that Hires ratio has been around for thousands of years and is the
Right.
most optimized weight shape for combat and survival.
Right.
So they've maximized the jockey
Mhm.
on the horse in a horse race.
Right.
They've given the horse just enough muscle
Mhm.
and found the right size jockey
Yep.
on the horse to be able to be not necessarily the fastest, but the fastest while making turns and
Right.
survivability for the pilot and all this. And so that's what Hires ratio is.
Right.
And so he wanted to continue chasing, but as he did, the percentage, uh, the probability of the Asian plane reaching its mothership kept increasing.
Right.
And with that, it would have put him out of range of his ship and
Mhm.
the possibility of being captured
Or killed.
or killed. And
Because it
so
didn't really seem like they captured too many ships. Seems like they just blew them out of the sky.
yeah. So he returns to the Centira and is talking to Herrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Commander Herrick. And so they're looking into what the hell was going on,
Mhm.
trying to figure it out. Um, then Herrick gets news that Zatar himself is coming to take command of his ship.
Yeah.
He's like, he gets real nervous, and he's like, this has to do something with the Gana. I wrote it down. I didn't write it down, but it was like Garanet or something. So
Yeah. I don't remember what that was. I did think that it was pretty interesting that they called their warships Talons, or basically like their fleet was called a Talon.
mhm,
I thought
that's
that was
pretty cool
pretty
too.
cool.
Yeah. So he's afraid, and whatever the G thing was, it was like the central computer or whatever. They were analyzing all sorts of stuff. So
Right.
he comes. He's afraid of the whim death,
Mhm.
which is a capitalized proper noun that the Chimera lords can just say, "Hey, for whatever reason, I you're
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 dead.
dead now,"
Yeah.
and have them put to death. So he's afraid of that.
Did think it was interesting that everybody else calls these Braxana large the pale ones.
Oh yeah, and rightfully so because all
Yeah.
the cosmetics and
Right.
everything. Um, So Commander Herrick is nervous about Zatar showing up because of his losses in battle, and that's the reason
Mhm.
Zatar is showing up.
Right.
Now he's afraid that Zatar is going to just supplant him,
Mm-hmm.
but when he gets there and Zatar is talking to them, he actually realizes that Zatar is interested in figuring out why the losses are happening and solve it and have
Right.
Herrick continue command of his ship.
Yeah. And leading into that, like you see that nobody on the war front likes the Braxana lords, because like, who knows why they're coming? They usually come for their own amusements. They stay for a little bit and then they go back. And then Zatar shows up and he is not that at all. Like he's identified a specific problem and he's trying to fix it and then give it back to Herrick.
Yeah. And Zatar is actually excited that when he finds out, he's like, okay, if I can pinpoint this to a person,
Mm-hmm.
then we can fix that problem.
Right.
And so that he's going down that route. And so like here they you notice all the soldiers on that ship
Mm-hmm.
recognize Zatar's perfect physical. He's a perfect physical specimen.
Yes.
And unlike them, and unlike the fighter pilots, so the fighter
Mm-hmm.
pilots are like jockeys.
Right.
They fit better into the ships, and he is too bulky and massive to really effectively be a great fighter pilot.
Right.
Zatar and Herrick start tracking down the origins of that one ship
Mm-hmm.
that Cecil was chasing after,
Right.
and they do track it down to the Conqueror.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting was they went back and they tracked there was like four. I think there was 4 losses that Herrick had,
Mm-hmm.
and they figured out that in each of those 4 losses there was a different fighter ship that did not belong to the mothership that they were basically attacking.
Mm-hmm.
They tracked each of those 4 different ones back to the Conqueror.
Yeah. Yes.
And Zatar's like, but that doesn't make sense. That violates the Azean rule that the ships stay with their mothership. So he's trying to figure that part out.
And while they're doing that, Zatar's like realizes, you know what? Well, sorry. They get news that there's a sword ship, an Azean sword ship that has showed up, and Zatar's like, right on time, just like
Right.
I thought. And Zatar runs off. He gets in a fighter in a sword ship.
Well, he's running off in his traditional Braxton outfit, and it says like he's literally like leaving a trail of clothing behind him because he knows it's not going to fit. So he's like stripping off his clothes, which is very abnormal for a Braxton.
Yeah, the Lord.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and he has the thought, would he have, or he has the thought for just a second, if only I had time to change into, the fighter pilot suit,
Mm-hmm.
his flight suit, basically. But something else I thought was interesting right before that happens is like he starts to win over the crew just by being there. Like they say they walked in on him in the gym and he's doing feats of strength that nobody had ever seen before. Even the guys in the crew that were bigger, they were like, he is so incredibly strong, and he was working out wearing that Braxton outfit that's like super tight. So basically, I mean, he had a bench shirt on, so it shouldn't be that impressive, right?
Right.
Because it talked about how tight it was around him. Like, man, dude's working out in gear. Come on.
Yeah. And he's stripping down so he can actually meet the weight requirements, or attempt to meet the weight requirements for the sword ship. I'm guessing it's a weight requirement.
Yeah, it goes back to that formula. Like
the Hires ratio.
The less he weighs, the better performance he's going to get out of that ship.
Correct. And so he's in the ship now, and so the entire page 220, I think I held my breath for that entire page. It basically describing the effects of G-forces on him as he's going, and he's not used to it. Two, he's a lot larger, and so he's forcing this ship to comply to Heyer's ratio, even though he doesn't meet the requirement.
Yep. And all the controls for the ship are at their fingertips.
Yeah,
because there's so much G-forces they can't move their arms.
You can't pick your arm up. He's like, now I understand why they're right here. And
the other fighter pilots are dropping out. Like they're dropping like flies.
Yeah, they're in some of them because they're just passing out.
Yeah,
but others he's not sure if they're dying or not.
Yeah, but one sticks with him. The one was able to stay with him. It was Sazel.
Yeah,
Sazel was able to hang with him.
So I skipped a few pages. So they catch the ship. I wrote down the last paragraph description of the void on page 224. So the superluminal void, and so the void is just space. That's the Braxin term for interstellar space. Secret world which nature had not meant man to see. It was a reality no human mind could grasp. As an infinity of darkness in which reason defied observation, an emptiness so absolute that the mind fought to deny its existence. Where movement was lacking, the unconscious mind created it. Darkness crawled, writhed, twisted across the eyes, and pierced the unwilling brain, driving back rational thought in favor of sensory chaos. There was noise, but it defied description. Noise that blinded, noise that choked, a black hollow sound that filled the universe with its emptiness. The senses mixed and merged, each seeking in the other some genuine stimulus to serve as an anchor in the eternal nothing, and failing, the mind floundered, lost in chaos, and welcomed fear as a concrete thing, a familiar sensation in a universe gone mad. So just her use of description here is
stellar.
Yeah.
Like
interstellar.
Yeah, interstellar. It is insane. And then we see Zatar really struggling with it because he's looking at this and it talks about, something the mind can't comprehend. And he's like, no, I'm all right. I have to be.
Yeah, I'm Braxana. I have to be.
He's literally willing himself, like through sheer willpower, to not go crazy right there.
Yeah. So he goes in, he pops the thing off the sword ship.
Right.
Realizes that, okay, there's a red and silver cord on the Azean pilot's head. The Azean pilot is a female.
Yep.
And then it cuts to them being back on the ship.
Well, yeah, he realized that he recognized the cord as her being psychic.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of just assumed we understood that by the red and white cord, but
yeah, well, but that was a really big revelation for them. Like he saw that, he's like, she's psychic. So that was a pretty big revelation right there.
Yeah, for him. And we learned that Zatar was out for 2 days after the battle.
Yep.
He's reapplying skin white, which is a cosmetic that makes his skin more white. He's again, after that accomplishment of catching the Azean sword ship, he's making a legend of himself again.
Yep.
with his beauty and his resiliency. So the fact that he's coming back from this and he still looks amazing.
Yeah. Well, and then the fact that he gets up to walk and his doctors are just like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm walking." But he's describing like the intense physical pain he's in, but he refuses to show.
Which what's her name does that too. Ansha
Yeah.
does that too. Let's see.
He's just elevating himself more. Like he's slowly but surely winning over everybody.
And let's see, the last thing the last revelation I had in here was they analyzed the ship, and because the pilot was psychic, they removed the communication system because
Yep.
they have the psychic relay. They didn't specify that in there, but as a reader, we know that.
Yeah.
The Braxins don't know that.
Right.
They're not sure why the communications relay. Well, I think he kind of does. Because he mentions like if you can make the range of communication infinite, then
Right. Then you don't
get
need
rid
this.
of yes. And they got rid of the grounding systems. So is that like landing?
That's kind of what I figured.
And so both of those, it lightens the ship's base mass and increases its maneuverability.
And then on top of that, using a female pilot, females traditionally weigh less.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true in this one, in this universe, but
maybe for the Azeans it is. I don't know.
In our world, it would be true.
Right.
And so we are at 90 minutes now, and we have the last chapter. We could talk forever. Like I have 3 pages of notes on this chapter alone. So I don't know if you want to speed through the first sections and talk more about the last section of this chapter.
I'm really more interested in the last section of this chapter. Like the first the first part is really setting up the end.
Okay, so let's see. Speed run here. Chapter 15, we're back to the politics.
Yep.
They talk about gents a whole lot more. And so the glossary of the book describes a gent as the passage of moon phases on Jean, the planet Jean.
Yeah.
And so it's about 17 plus days.
Right.
So one gent is 17 plus days. They go through they were talking about something where they were like, here's 5 gents ago, here's 6 gents ago.
It was the loss of border.
Oh yeah, okay, the war.
The Asians were slowly creeping in and taking more territory.
Okay, yep, that's right. So Braxy will kill children to prevent development of psychics.
Yep.
They're actually more afraid of losing a war to a woman than simply losing a war.
Yep.
Zatar decides he'll spend
that goes back to that whole that
Shemar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The poet.
The poet, yep. And that whole mythology about being taken over by females, yep.
Which we do get more on that in this chapter too. Zatar will spend 2 to 3 years infiltrating Asia to assassinate Ansha Lu. He also proposes restructuring the Braxy political power dynamic to being 7 Chimera lords, 2 sets of 3 allies, and then 1 neutral.
Well, and then they make a big point about saying a prime number. Then he made a big point about there having to be 7 because 7 was a prime number.
Right. So it can't be divided equally.
Right.
Well, I mean, odd numbers too, but yeah. It can only be divided by itself in 1. All right. All right. Cut to Ansha. She has now been commanding the Conqueror for 5 years now. And at first we think she's killing civilians on her ground leave. So at first I was like, okay, she's just killing people when she goes out to ground leave.
Right.
Then we learn she is not purposely killing them. She's
Mhm.
trying to have intimate sex, but her violent past thoughts are too much for her mates.
Well, because that goes back to the touch discipline. So if you think back to the when she fought the blood with the bloodletters, and they went to touch her and they couldn't. It caused them physical pain. And then she starts talking about how she's been denying herself, like through her training, and she was like, I've been denied myself, basically denied herself sex because she was scared to touch people. And so here she's like, her physician's the one that figures it out.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I finally figured out that you're the one killing these people. And then she's like, here's why.
Yeah, he was like, why are you killing these people? Like, I stopped it. I could not continue with this autopsy because I knew exactly who it was.
Yeah.
Why are you killing people? She's like, well,
see, what had happened was
see, what I have in my pants is just so good. I really I love how she wrote that section, because at first you're like, okay, she's killing people, and then
right.
oh, all right, is this worse or is this better?
Right.
Like, does it make it better that she's not purposely killing people, or is
And
it
that she's
worse?
seeking out people that are bad,
Right.
it's like to try her experiment on. I don't know.
Cut forward now, Zatar has been spying for 2 years now, and he's
Mhm.
returned. So he's done his spying.
Yep.
He had formulated a poison that was so unique to her biology, as unique as a fingerprint on a
Yeah,
person.
it was the Black Death again. Same
Yeah,
thing
it
that he
was,
used to kill her parents.
except this one was this formula of it is supposed to only work on her,
Right.
and to a point that it ensures that she will die.
Right.
So she is poisoned. We learned that Talos's poetry is being used for propaganda.
Mhm.
The Shimar trial, so they're putting lots of Shimar on trial,
Mhm.
which instigates more hatred towards women trying to rule.
Right.
This sets up more hatred towards Asia and Ansha.
Mhm.
So, and
But this was all part of Zatar's plan.
correct. And so,
Every
like,
single bit of that was all his plan.
so whenever it does happen,
Mhm.
people will be like, "Oh yeah, we did it. We
Yep.
accomplished this." And who did it? Zatar.
Yep.
The Chimera restructure is almost complete at this point.
Mhm.
Not quite, but almost there. And then section 4. This is a short section. The doctor finds the poison.
Yep.
So her physician finds the poison and is sure that he can cure her. He tracks how long it'll take the poison to happen. The truce is already set up.
Mhm.
And so they look forward and say, okay, it's supposed to kill her at this point,
Right.
which is during the truce.
And which is also whenever she also figured who poisoned her because of that.
Right. And then we're on to the last section, which is the truce meeting.
Mhm.
And so we know that the poison isn't going to take place, but
Right.
Zatar is anxiously awaiting. He's like,
Oh
ooh,
boy, here we
this,
go.
and he told all of his boys, he said, look, there's something's going to happen.
Mhm.
I don't think he told them what was going to happen because of what he says later.
Right.
His fear that Ansha was going to open her mouth and say,
Mhm.
hey,
That poison
your
didn't work.
assassination tip didn't work, which would have politically destroyed him.
Yeah, it would have everything he had been stacking to that point would have just died instantly.
Which would have been terrible. But yeah, her death was going to be like so painful
Mhm.
and horrid inside of this truce room.
And public.
Yes.
Very public.
And so She doesn't open her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
She just kind of smiles at him. I did think it was interesting when they filed into the room. The Braxis went to the left with the first most powerful
Yeah.
went to the left, and the Azeans went to the right. And so it ensured, they said it ensured that the most powerful were sitting across from each
Right.
other. But Ansha didn't come in first.
Yeah.
She came
Apparently,
in last.
and apparently that was a thing. Like the Asians always made them wait.
Yeah, and he didn't like that because of she was a female,
Yeah.
and so like everybody is in the room, and then she comes in last.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a power thing. Did I miss anything in their truth speak other than what we went over right then?
No, like he was trying to throw out all these different peace treaty things, and she just kept shooting them down because she knew he was stalling, and so she was like, nope, nope, nope. And instead of engaging in any sort of discourse, she was just like, next, next.
Yeah. Oh, and she did not. So he pointed out that initially, when she did that,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't do it as a command.
Yeah.
She did it as a submissive suggestion that he had something else,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that it wouldn't people. He feels that she did that so that people didn't immediately label her Shimar,
Right.
which did not play into him.
Right.
Like, it played against him.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, this woman isn't
She's not
trying to.
commanding anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So they leave the truce room. Ansha stays in there. And then as Zatar finishes talking to the other Chimeric lords, he goes back in
Yep.
and sits down, and they hold hands and
And
initiate.
he initiated that. He took his gloves off and reached out, and she was like, are you sure you want to do that? And he's like, yes.
He did. He still had at least one glove on.
Well, yeah, he had one glove on. Yeah.
Okay, because I remember that end where he
Right.
woke up and his glove was torn and his hand
Yeah.
was all bloody from her sticking her nails in.
Right.
And so they initiated telepathic connection. So I found that thing. So before chapter 15, yeah. So right before this chapter, that the thing I told you about passion and hatred,
Mm-hmm.
it was in this book.
Yeah.
So Vuitton said, the relationship between hatred and desire is this, that they are born of the same passionate source. That being observed, they are often confused, and that each one intensifies the other.
Mm-hmm.
That her placement of that specifically, and there were other ones too that we talked about in this section, but the placement of those right before the chapters
Yeah.
are like, I'm starting to realize, okay, that is a philosophical thing that is
Mm-hmm.
playing into this chapter.
Right.
Because they're Zatar, after talking, so not even before they get into the telepathic connection, he has a much more commanding respect of Ansha
Mm-hmm.
as a strategist,
Yeah.
as a leader. Don't tell any of the other Chimeric lords that.
Right. But again, he's not like the other chimeras. He's definitely more open to outside ideas than the other guys are.
Oh yeah, but he doesn't want to. He really doesn't want people to know that yet.
Right. No,
So,
yeah. Yet.
But so before we even got to the telepathic connection, I was like, okay, these two are gonna hate fuck each other.
Basically, that's kind of what happens here.
It is what
like
happens here.
Whenever they start doing this whole psychic battle, and she says, as deep as you go is how deep I'm going to go. And like they're just he's trying to get down to the core and the essence of what she is,
and find her name,
right, and
proper noun.
And then she's doing the same thing to him, which is interesting that he's able to do it with no psychic training. He's able to dive and see with no psychic training because he kind of lets himself go into it. And then he ends up feeling bad and feeling remorse for her.
Yeah.
Because
it's funny. He still tells her, "I'm going to kill you."
Yeah.
So they basically mirror their sentences to each other. It's like, "You're mine. I'm going to kill you. You're
and
going
nobody
to know it. Everybody else will know it."
Yeah. And they basically say, like, I'm going to make sure that I'm the only one that does it. Like, you're going to die by my hand, nobody else's.
Right. Which makes me wonder, why didn't they just kill one another right then?
Who knows?
But Zatar says, "All right, I'm going to kill you." But I don't think he tells her this, but feeling inside, he's like, after I kill her, I'm going to go find the person that did that to her
Yeah. And
and
kill them.
Which is funny because, all right, so she had a traumatic experience when he killed her parents, right?
Right.
And so she wants to kill him because he killed her parents.
Mm-hmm.
However, what followed after that with it wasn't Torja.
No,
Torja wasn't the one that put that hatred in her.
It was the Institute.
Yeah, it was the
director of the Institute.
Programmed all that hatred inside of her that broke her.
Mm-hmm. And he said he could actually see the cuts and the redirections and, like, basically the mental reprogramming. He could actually see it. And that's when he started feeling bad for her. He's like, no wonder she feels this way, and there's things she can't do. It's here. Somebody did this.
Right. And
she's and at this point, she's desperately trying to break contact.
Yeah. So he goes so deep that he becomes, so he's appreciating her so much and learning so much more about her, and he has left his body.
Yeah.
So it's like a strong. I wrote down that he has a strong innate power over psychic. Somehow, he's having an existential crisis or an enlightenment.
Yeah.
When I read that he was floating incorporeal in her mind, and he could feel her trying to let go.
Yeah.
But he was like, "I don't want to let go," and he's like, "But I don't feel control of any body."
Right.
And then he's like, "All right, I put myself." He's like, "I put myself into this limb, and I experienced complete handness." I was just like, I looked at my hand. I was like, okay, just imagine. Now I'm not in this body.
Right.
My body is this hand.
Yeah.
And then he like grabbed on, and he held longer.
Yeah.
And then that's when he went deeper into her mind, and to a point where when he was coming out of it, they both realized that she could not break off the contact.
Right.
She could not disconnect. He was holding her in.
Right.
And they were both surprised by that.
Yeah.
And like, to a point where I believe he has psychic abilities.
And it's a lot stronger than either one of them realized.
Right. And so so the fact, going back earlier, that the Braxi kill children to prevent the formation of psychics, I don't think they've done a great job of it.
Right. Because I mean, how do you, it doesn't seem like that's something that you can really just find easily. Like, the Azeans look for it, they test for it. The Braxton's just like, we've bred that out. Apparently not.
Yeah. And so like he finally forces himself to disconnect, and when your daughter's in the back.
Yeah, they're
What is it?
starting to rush me. We're supposed to be going to the farmer's market here in a little bit.
Is that a toy for your daughter? So Ansha's nails were clawed into his hand because she was trying desperately to pull out, because she was like, this is too much. This is
Right.
too much. This is too much. And he comes out, his hand's a blade, he takes the glove off and he gives it to her as a momentum.
And there's memento, and there's blood dripping out of it.
Yeah, you could probably like squeeze it like a sponge and all this blood comes out. And then the chapter ends with her crying.
Yep.
And her realization that Zatar taught her and allowed her to cry,
to feel emotion, period.
And like, holy shit. So a theme here between these two is, all right, these two are definitely enemies.
Yeah.
Now, the Cold Fire trilogy by her, I've read, and I love how she writes interactions between I'll call Zatar and Ansha both anti-heroes, because I don't think there's a moral and an immoral side in this situation.
No, they're everything they do is for the singular focus of winning their end objective, and they're willing to do whatever it takes, good, bad, ugly, whatever, to achieve that goal.
Right. And so they're enemies, but they're also anti-heroes.
Right.
And so their relationship, and I think she really writes these types of relationships extremely well. And that is a excellent version of it.
Yeah, 100% agree.
I don't know. I hope we see those two together on page again. But Zatar does mention that he doesn't know if they will ever be in person again.
Right.
And he mentions because that's the way of stellar warfare.
Which makes sense. But I think they're too deeply connected to not be in the same room again.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think I don't think they end up killing each other at the end of this book.
I agree.
I'm gonna put that out there.
I agree, because I think that we are going to see a giant changing of the guard. Like I said before, I think they're both going to see that this, because even he says the war is a farce. He's like, the war's been going on for so long that nobody even knows why it started. We both hate each other for no reason. I think we're going to see these two. I'm going to put this out again. I think we're going to see them join up and end the battle. That's what I'm saying. The war is going to be over. They're going to fix it.
I don't know if it goes that far, but yeah, I don't think they kill each other.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
All right, so that's this. Hey, we only went over like 15 minutes.
This is true.
So, I mean, I think we did pretty good here.
I would agree.
There was a lot to talk about. Like, there really is. And halfway through, I'm really happy with this book. Like, halfway through right now, I'm giving it like an 8.9 to a 9.2.
It's definitely, it's a lot better than I expected. Hands down.
Hopefully the second half doesn't ruin it. But we shall see.
We shall see.
Next section.
There it is. What's the next section?
We're going to read through chapter 22. So stop at chapter 23. The last page of chapter 22 is 397.
397. Got it.
It's a slightly shorter section than last week. I think last week's was actually the longest section that we'll have. And then, so we have that section, and then the last section is like 102 pages.
That's not bad.
So we have 2 sections left of this book. We are halfway through. And I know you're going to the farmer's market today. I have no idea what I'm doing today. I did, real quickly, I did start playing an old game from the 90s called The Seventh Guest again.
Huh, interesting.
I
Never heard of it.
Used to play it in the 90s, and
Mhm.
it's kind of has a horror type story overall. Like there was
Okay.
a man who was a beggar. He robbed people, but then he found a doll, and then he recreated the doll, and then he
Hmm.
started making toys. Then he has a mansion. Then he invites 7 people to the mansion one night, and then that's kind of like where the story begins. And you're going through this house,
Interesting.
and you're getting little clips of the story of the 7 people that were at the house that night,
Hmm.
and you're solving puzzles
Huh.
inside the house. So as you solve puzzles, it reveals more of the story.
Gotcha.
So there's like 25 puzzles in it, and they're a lot easier now as a 38-year-old man than they were as a 10 or 11-year-old. So, yep. But
Right on.
so until next time, Mike,
Until next time.
I'm excited to continue this conversation about this book.
Right on, man. Well, I'm going to go finish getting ready so I can go to the farmer's market because that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
You got the horses chomping at the bit back there.
100%.
All right, Mike, you have a great day, man.
You too, bud. Talk to y'all later.